What's up, everybody, and welcome to today's episode on EMS Culture of Safety. And I know what you're thinking. Safety and EMS has to be an oxymoron, right? There's no way that EMS can ever be safe. But ironically, the registry wants us to be safe, and they want us, believably, to go home at the end of every shift, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And I think our wives would say the same thing.
As much as we didn't want them to, sometimes they do. So the registry wants us to look at this, and they want us to know the new way of thinking, the new mindset. I know when I started all those years ago, the just culture wasn't a thing, and it's not just for kids anymore, if you would say. It's really a new concept in the way EMS thinks.
Yeah, I think even me, I started a couple years later than Mike did, but not much. And it was even then it was more of a Wild Wild West cowboy kind of style. I mean, it was just you do what you do to get it done.
Yep. Here's the keys. Here's the narcs.
Right.
Have fun.
Absolutely.
So let's dive in and look at this and see what we've got lined out today.
All right, so we're gonna have to go over some lesson objectives today with what we're going to be covering. First, we're going to define the culture of safety. What is the actual definition of culture of safety? Identify and explain the 6 core elements necessary to advance an EMS culture of safety, which good luck, and identify the role of EMS providers in establishing a culture of safety within EMS organizations. So what specifically can you do in this situation?
And I think just as importantly, what can management do for us? Remember, they want you to be safe, just like you need yourself to be safe. So this way of thinking when it comes to EMS culture is a new concept, and it has to be applied across the spectrum from management down to us. Remember, to have effective team leaders, you have to have effective team members as well. So in 2013, the National EMS Culture of Safety Strategy was published, and this was just a conglomerate of different agencies coming together to try to make EMS safer. And I don't think that EMS maybe wasn't safe all those years ago, but like Riley said, it was more wild, Wild West style when we both started.
Yeah, it definitely. I agree. I don't think we were out there just, being reckless by any means, but I mean, if you want my honest truth, I think that agencies had to pay too much workman's comp, and so now they decided, nope, we're gonna reel it in a little bit and make sure that we're not doing things that are gonna get us hurt. Because from an administrative standpoint, I mean, of course, they want us to all go home to our families, but they also don't want to pay multi-million-dollar
workers'
payouts,
comp.
right?
Yeah, so, and they need people. They need those people to show up to work, and they need them on the truck. And so that's where the development of this document was almost funded by, was an NHTSA project grant, and it brought together stakeholders or big companies, municipalities, counties, and they wanted to identify what constitutes a safe environment for EMS patients, and again, me, you, and y'all out there in the EMS world. And they wanted to see the challenges to achieving a safe EMS environment. And then they wanted strategies, of course, that they could implement further down the road once they saw what those challenges were.
It was just, developing all of that, and then I think it's a lot like the crew resource management, if you agree or not. I think we've got a great setup there. It's ready to go. It's just now we've got to get the buy-in.
Apply it, yep.
We've got to get the buy-in, and it also kind of has to do with the mental health aspect of our jobs, right? I always bring up my dad, okay? If you don't want to make pencils, don't work for the pencil factory. That's what he says, okay? So we can't do that anymore, man. Like we're past that point. We've got to be safe. We've got to know that we need that mental health help if we need it, right? And be able to access that shamelessly. And we've got to buy into all of these things that are going to make us a stronger and more safe profession, right? I mean, because there's a reason why our numbers in all of these categories are high, right? There's a reason why this job is arguably in certain times as dangerous as being an active duty military, right?
And police, yep.
Yes, so we've got to do what we can. If we can mitigate some of those risks, do it, right? Why not? Why not do that?
Yep. And in 2015, several national EMS agencies and organizations came together and they established that mechanism and they got those recommendations together, and they organized the National EMS Culture of Safety strategy, and then they wanted to implement those. And these organizations came together and make what me and you now know today as the National EMS Safety Council.
If you did know about that.
If you did. If you did.
All right, so we've got a big list of all of the member organizations for this National EMS Safety Council that exists out there, right? So first you've got the American Ambulance Association, American College of Emergency Physicians, which, you know, they've got a lot to do with a lot of our current and up-to-date treatments and things that we come up with. Association of Air Medical Services, that's a whole different safety game. Center for Patient Safety, International Association of Fire Chiefs, and we can keep going on and on if you want. National Association of EMS Educators, National Association of EMS Physicians, which is a lot like your College of Emergency Physicians, right? National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians. There's a whole bunch of national associations. My gosh. National Association of State EMS Officials. National EMS Management Association. Well, they threw association at the end there. I like that.
Yep.
A little curveball. National Registry of Emergency Medical Technicians. We all know the NREMT guys. National Safety Council and National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's Office of EMS.
Which is a branch off of a state office. And I think it's sort of ironic when we're talking about crew resource management that the Association of Air Medical Service is part of the National EMS Safety Council, because that's where our crew resource management ideas come from. And I think even still from my time flying to the ground, there's still a big gap in how we manage ourselves on the ground and use those resources as ground providers versus safety. For those that fly, it's always 3 to go, 1 to say no. If only one person doesn't want to go, we're not going to, but we don't always have that luxury when we're going to calls.
I remember calls, certain scenarios, me and you together, where both of us said, no, we don't want to go. And here we are on an icy road going down, bouncing down the highway in an ambulance. So, I think I agree.
That needs to be gapped. And that's why we've gotten all of these organizations or associations, as you will, together. So the National EMS Safety Council, and of course they have a definition, if you will, but the purpose of this council is to ensure that patients receive emergency and mobile health care with the highest standards possible. And that just doesn't mean that you give them what they want, like a pain medicine, or you take them where they want to go, but it really regards more to how we're going to take care of them safely.
I wonder how much of this is tailoring into, see that mobile health care. I wonder if they are starting to dive into that community paramedicine as well.
Make it more logistically feasible for them.
Integrated healthcare system that a lot of the places are going to cut down on those stub toes in the ERs and
all those non-needed transports that happen.
That we love.
That we do every day. Because think about it.
They happen between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. That's about when those calls happen.
Is that risk there? Is it there? Is that 2 a.m. toothache necessary to transport? I guess we all have our own opinions on that, right? But throw in icy roads, throw in severe weather. Do those transfers have to go emergently? Are they even emergent to begin with? Right. And that's what this looks at with this safety council.
And you can start to even, we all remember. I mean, do you remember sitting outside with a patient at an ER mid-COVID for 5+ hours because there's no one to take the patient?
Yep.
And you want me to sit there with a stub toe at 2 a.m.
and wait.
And whenever there's really sick people out there that are going to need us in that time frame, right?
Yep, so absolutely.
I think this is there's a lot to look at here, a lot to open up, and a lot that we can
dive into with it, break apart.
Absolutely. All right, so just culture, 6 core elements. Just culture is going to be that first one, right? Me and Mike were kind of joking before we started this, and it was like, man, how are we going to do this, dude? Like, this is not in our wheelhouse. We were, like I said, we were those Wild Wild West kind of guys that were just like, hey, I had 2 shifts before I was cleared to ride as a paramedic.
Yeah, don't speak unless you're
48
spoken to.
hours before I was cleared to work as a paramedic. That's how it used to be. You know, now you've got 6-month clearing process, things like that. You know, but so we were like, man, how are we going to do this? This is going to be pretty funny, you know. But so the 6 core elements are going to be just culture, coordinated support and resources, EMS safety data system, EMS education initiatives, EMS safety standards, and requirements for reporting and investigation.
Which seem to have grown substantially nowadays. And it seems like as the requirements for what we need to report and investigate seem to grow, the education initiatives go the opposite way. And I still can't figure out why those have become so imbalanced, I guess, if you will. Why is one thing more important than the other? It would seem like to me EMS education would be top tier, top priority. How are we going to further our profession if we don't advance our education? But it seems as we go further that the requirements go down.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, it's always a double-edged sword, right? You know, like they're going to go and, you know, they'll make the requirements a little bit easier, and then they're going to see the standard of care drop a little bit, and then they're going to say, whoa, pump the brakes. Let's, you know, now you're going to have to be a doctor.
Go back the other way.
You're going to be a doctor to be on an ambulance, and then nobody in ambulances, so
it's a big loop.
Yes, absolutely.
So like we were talking about earlier, what is just culture? And I don't have a lot of experience with just culture. Again, like Riley, I was brought up in EMS in an environment where I didn't talk unless I was spoken to. I sat in the corner and I watched and I observed. I had no feelings. And I think just culture plays more into a mindset that there's an equality. And it probably should have been this way when me and you started. We just didn't have that luxury. And just culture is sort of just that. It's the process, a concept of attempting to manage the human side of things through how we design the system and the choices that we have to make. Is that choice that I made relevant to the situation? And would Riley, for instance, make that same choice that I just made?
Yeah, you know, and is it? I think correct me if I'm wrong, but for the just culture, I think it's more on the logistics is not the right word I'm looking for, but the clinical side versus, you know, it's not really a. Oh man,
it's a mindset.
Yeah,
would 10 paramedics or 10 EMTs in the same situation make the same choice within reason,
right?
Yeah, on the clinical side, and you could probably apply it to the logistics side of things as well, with dispatchers or fire scenes that are chaotic and resources. But it tries to. I think the big thing is that it wants to keep everybody on that equal playing field.
So not shut your mouth and go stand in the wheel well.
Yep, everybody.
Okay.
You know, your opinion.
That's what happened
now.
To me. You know, like whenever I first started, it was like, don't we need
No, yeah. Riley finally, after all these years, has an opinion, and we should all value Riley's opinion. That's what it took. It took just cultures. Now he can feel free to discuss any safety concerns. What was going on? Was that a smart choice to make? And he should be able to do that just like y'all should, without fear of repercussion. And then it also gives us the ability to learn and to take from one another what we can. Remember, every scenario, every call, it's going to be different. We can train until we're blue in the face, but we can't prepare for every situation.
I'm glad that we are, I think, where we're at or heading in that direction, because I can't tell you the things that I've learned from the people that I have FTO'd.
Yeah.
Brand new paramedics, brand new EMTs, fresh out of school, and you know they would say something, and I'm like, "Wait, what?" And like,
when did that happen?
Something has changed in between the 15 years since I went to paramedic school, and so it's like, wow, okay, and you know, you look into it, and it's like, man, I'm glad that you were here today because now I know this, and it's going to help me as a clinician, right? Whereas when I first started, I know that if I would have came in and said like, "Hey, man, you know, we're learning this new thing," they would have said, why are you talking right
who
now?
Are you?
Go sit down and shut your mouth. Like, you know, and they would have never learned, right? And, you know, I think that I'm glad that we are here now because now everybody understands that you don't know everything.
We're all equal from 1 to 10 years. You
Absolutely.
know, there's an equality when it comes to learning.
Yes. All right, so coordinated support and resources. Coordinated support and resources advancing EMS safety industry-wide will require the support, guidance, and resource sharing from a broad spectrum of stakeholders. So really, at the end of the day, all of these people that are on all of these councils, all of these people that have 3 letters behind their names and have like 6 or 8 zeros in their bank accounts probably, those people have to talk to each other.
Together,
right?
Yeah.
And agree and come up with and share all of their experiences with each other and not keep them for themselves to make their place better, right? So it takes a lot of non-selfishness, but is that there currently? I hope so. We're going to establish an EMS safety resource center that could facilitate this. Are we talking about on a national level, like a national EMS Safety Resource Center?
Yep.
Almost like a NIMS, maybe. Something that's got like that type of deal to where it's a incident management system, and you go to the NIMS place, right? I know those are dreadful classes, but they've got a pretty cool facility in some of those places. The resource center would not have regulatory or enforcement authority, but it could monitor progress and facilitate information sharing. So they could tell you're not doing what you're supposed to do, but they can't get you in trouble.
Almost like a Medicare or Medicaid reimbursement program. The ambulance associations that you get associated with, or some services do that allow them to bill more. I guess they could technically enforce that you can't bill to that max with that, but it's the same thing. It's almost like a JCO for EMS, right? They come in and make sure that you're doing stuff the way you should be doing
which
it.
Right now we don't have.
Well, we don't have,
right.
But yeah.
But our infection rates are better than hospitals. But anyways, so the resource center would not replace other initiatives, but would supplement and support them.
It's supporting them locally and on the state level. And remember, these are concepts. This Just Culture concept doesn't just apply to your system locally or your county system or your city municipality system. This can, like Riley said, be used when you're using those NIMS classes as well and you're on a state deployment. That's probably when you need this the most. When you're going to that hurricane-affected area or that tornado-affected area, you want to use these concepts in your everyday working to keep you safe.
I hope to sometime get to a point to where this aspect of our job becomes a part of the national scope of practice.
Yeah.
To where it is all there, and this is what is expected of a service that opens up. This is what is expected, and this is what is expected of each clinician or each provider that has to do with it.
So we have a National EMS Safety Council. What do we do with all that information? Well, we put everything into a big chart, a big safety data system. And that's centralized data to analyze the scope of the EMS issues or the responder issues, adverse medical events, adverse events involving the community, and how those events hinder the efforts of EMS issues. And then we have the EMS safety data system, the authors for it, that would serve as a national, robust, well-designed, secure system linking and communicating with all of the information that they have presently.
And the system would be able to be accessible to researchers, policymakers, stakeholder organizations, and all EMS agencies. So it'd be like a national database, if you will. And you could just tap into it and find whatever topic you need, whatever is pertaining to that current scenario or issue, and find your guidance.
Use what you need to, Will. And I think it's also really important to note that stakeholder, in my opinion at least, is us. It's Riley. It's me. It's my wife that works on an ambulance. It's all of our brothers and sisters out there that do this. We are stakeholders in this just as much as your boss and your boss's boss and your supervisors are.
Right. Just not a big of a steak, right?
Yeah.
It's like a little 4 ounce. All right. So EMS education initiatives. Here us at C Solutions, we wish there was a lot more education initiatives, right?
Yeah. Don't get me on my soapbox with this.
So a culture of safety must be fully integrated into each component of EMS education, not as an afterthought or chapter in a textbook. And my soapbox on this, if we're talking about soapboxes, is, the service that me and Mike, where we met, where we both worked for, how much training did we get on violent and combative patients?
I mean, I don't think it was just there. I think it's broad spectrum. I don't remember a lot. Maybe on the flight side of things, but it was more policy and procedures of who we did and did not fly. But I mean, I'm talking about going years back. There was never any.
Yep.
It was just good luck.
Right. Yeah. I mean, back when I went to school, I do remember an instructor saying, "Hey, they give you a big metal mag light for a reason."
Yep.
Like, what? They don't teach that anymore, right? So, but that's the point. Is like it was such an afterthought. It wasn't a chapter in the text. It's still not a chapter in textbook.
No,
even in the current textbooks, there's nothing there that they don't really give us the tools of. All right, what do we do here? And that's only one aspect of safety. The violent patients, but that can be a big deal. That can be the difference. That can be the call that makes us not go home to our wife and kids, right?
Yep.
So we've got to know what to do in every scenario, not just, I have to make sure I have a backer whenever I'm reversing the ambulance so that we don't wreck the ambulance and make the stakeholders pay more money, right? That's totally different than, hey, make sure that, this violent patient has been cleared, and what do we do whenever he starts choking me? What's the next move? Like, what do we do here? There's so many different avenues of safety
in education, yeah.
That, do we need to just know, what do we need to do documentation-wise to keep us out of trouble? Or do we need to know Brazilian jiu-jitsu to get out of the violent patient's chokehold, right? Like, where do we go? But I don't think that there should be a limit. I think the more we know, the more we're trained on, the better equipped we're going to be.
Yeah, and that's not just, that's like in that one specific area
Absolutely.
too. But I think like the broad picture in EMS education is, for me at least, it feels like it's going backwards. And if you look in Australia or overseas, it's going
forward.
It's going forward. I know that COVID hurt EMS. I know that COVID hurt hospitals. I know that there is a shortage of EMS providers, and we need to make it easier for people to obtain it. But I don't think we make it easier for people to obtain their licensure at the expense of the people that we're supposed to take care of.
Correct.
Maybe we restructure our programs like they do overseas, where it's a more in-depth clinical, longer process. But education really needs to be in the forefront of what we're doing. And like this says, not just an afterthought or a chapter in a textbook, if it even, exists.
Yeah, I know we didn't teach it.
Nope. And EMS safety standards, this slide really, I think, says it all. Should we adopt evidence-based or census-based standards that promote safety from an operational, technical, and cultural perspective? Well, cultural is probably going to go down a road I don't want to go down, because I think each situation is different. But when you're talking about operationally and technically, I think that those standards should be set on the most common sense, safest way to do something, not just because a bean counter says that that's the safest way to do that. I think that happens too much with EMS. There's policy and procedure that really don't dictate the effectiveness of what we should be doing, and we end up in situations where we have a EMS safety council.
Right. Absolutely. I think I think there's some instances of we're not thinking about the right things on an administrative level. We're too worried about uniforms and response times to transfers versus, making sure that we are, everybody is proficient at intubating the patients that are cleared to do so, that have all of the necessary resources and tools and knowledge out there, that we're not really applying our energy in the right areas. Yeah. And I think that's where we're starting to get to. And that's why we're, as in America, EMS, in this boat that we're in, of that, like, are we falling for our requirements educatively wise, or is it, are we gonna start progressing again? And I think we've got to shift our energy.
Yeah, we want everybody always says we don't get paid enough in EMS, right? Like, I would agree, if you're working a ground truck, the pay is probably not what it should. But I think this is why, is because the education and safety standards just don't melt like they need to.
Right. All right, so requirements for reporting an investigation. Mandating reporting of important safety-related information is needed to make the National EMS Safety Data System effective. Steps to achieve this include determining what information is useful and what data is already available or mandated. This could include adding new data points to the National EMS Information System. When I read this, I think of, just me as a previous supervisor at a service. How many just little bitty fender benders, if you will, didn't get reported?
Mailboxes.
Deer. We're in Texas.
Yeah.
How many deer we just absolutely obliterated, right? Took a whole truck out of service, right? Could have potentially injured a patient or an employee, right? Depending on what happened in that. But a lot of those little ones, those things aren't getting reported to this database. They're not making it there. So when you look at like ambulance safety and you start to look at those numbers, those aren't true.
No,
they're not accurate.
Yeah, and on one of the slides I saw, not on this one, but the reporting ratio was like the threshold for error was like 60%. So I can only imagine that the threshold for error on this would be astronomically high as well.
I mean, going back to that violent patient, I've had encounters with 10, 15, 20 violent patients. I've reported or have been reported to a national database. Zero.
Yep.
That's how many. Zero. Like, that's just, at that point, this is what we signed up for. Right?
Yep.
This is part of the job, and we gotta, if we want to make a change, we have to change too. Is really at the end of the day.
Yep, and they need all of this, of course, to learn from it. And I know it just was really established in 2015, so we're going 8 years in. But I don't know that I've seen a whole lot of reactive policy change from this of all. In fact, it really wasn't until I was working on this refresher that I even really learned about this. So maybe it's coming, maybe in the future. So big picture here, what changes are needed to encourage the development of the culture of safety? And for me, that's mindset. It starts with me. It starts with Riley. It starts with those of you that are on the truck. But I think it also needs to trickle up to management, and it also needs to flow the other way. Remember, you can't have effective leaders without effective team members. I say that all the time.
It's absolutely a fluid relationship.
Has to be.
Gotta be. If your chief or your director is just like, I'll offer it, but
takes two.
Are you gonna go? No, right? So it takes both of them for sure to make this happen.
And then how are mistakes handled if one is made during a patient care encounter? I know, thinking back and mistakes that I've made, you better write this time and date down that I admitted that I've made mistakes in patient care before. I don't have really positive, not outcomes. The encounter was not what I would hoped it would have been. It wasn't from a position of we need to teach Mike this. It was that Mike was dumb and how could he have done something like that. And so I took from it a guarded sense of people wanting to teach me in the future instead of trying to learn something. Because we all make mistakes. It's going to happen. It's just how you deal with that and how that encounter is after that mistake is made. It really sets you going forward. And then how should it be handled if applying the concept of just culture? So how are we going to apply this on a global scale?
When your 6-month paramedic flies out the hypoglycemia that he thinks is a stroke, is it the same conversation as when me and you fly out the hypoglycemia that we think is a stroke?
No, not at all.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, it's got to be situational too, because we know better.
We're old, though.
Right.
We're old.
Altered mental status, stroke symptoms, check a sugar. Yep. Like every single time, because I've been in that office where I've been degraded and demeaned and said, like, can you tie your shoes? Like, that bad, where it's like, dude, I just forgot to check a sugar. I'm sorry. Like,
yep.
But I didn't do it again. So,
yeah. It's how are we going to handle these situations going forward? And I hope, and I think maybe statistically even, that the culture of EMS is really treated differently because the culture of how we communicate with each other as humans is really different than it was when we started EMS. So maybe those two trends of respect, is that a good way to say that?
Yes.
It has really trended more into the workplace. And then you also see more medical direction or more medical director involvement. I've worked at a couple services that were not flight services where you could call the medical director at 2 a.m. and you could ask him a question if you needed some help. And then I've worked at some where if you called the medical director at 2 a.m., you wouldn't have a job at 2:30 a.m.
You call him at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
And he ain't answering.
Yeah.
Or she's not answering. So I don't know. Tuesday afternoon. I know you're in the clinic, dude.
Answer your phone. Yep.
All right. Statistics on EMS work injuries. To collect data on non-fatal injuries among EMS workers, the NIOSH uses the occupational supplement to the National Electronic Injury Surveillance System, or
Big
the
words.
NEISS work, a national probability-based sample of U.S. hospital emergency departments. Prior to 2015, both injuries and illnesses were captured in the NEISS work, although illnesses were estimated to represent less than 10% of all cases.
10% of recordable or on-duty illnesses, I believe, is what they were going for in that.
Yeah, that's hard to believe. 10%. I got COVID from work. I don't know about you. That's what I got.
I didn't get COVID until way after my second.
I was actually showering at work, and I had, Old Spice, so you can't not smell that. And I was like, oh, no.
I've got it.
Didn't report it.
Of course not. And that's why we have statistics on EMS work injuries.
No, I did report. I say that. I don't know if it got reported there. I told my boss because I got my paid time off. Trust me.
Yep. So what they did with this is they put this all together, and you can actually see it on the next slide, of EMS work-related injuries, back sprains, ankle sprains, lifting. And would you believe that EMS actually has a higher rate of on-duty injury and statistically even on-duty violence than being a police officer does, at least when this was compiled and started in 2015 through 2021. I know times have changed. I don't know that they've changed drastically enough to affect this.
I would think yes, because... Was it all just because of violence, the injuries?
No, it was just back injuries.
How many fat people have we heard ourselves picking up?
A lot, yeah.
I 18 years old was when I first hurt my back, picking a fat dude up out of a wheelchair to transfer him to his recliner. He said, yeah, I can help. I can stand up.
No.
0% assistance.
Yep.
And twisted, threw my back out. I was 18 years old, man. But if I think we're talking about just straight violent, then we may not win that battle.
Correct.
But how many sprains and strains are because we haven't been to a gym in 18 months and we try to pick up a 400-pound patient off the ground,
It's
right?
been longer than 18 months. Way longer than 18 months. I go there and watch my wife work out while I eat pizza. That's what I do.
Doing good, honey.
Yeah, and there it is, and this is the confidence interval that we were talking about earlier. And there's 3,000 violence-related injuries, which is pretty high, but not as high as the overexertion and bodily reaction that we see there. That's picking up those people off the floor when they say that they can help. But look at that. The 16,000, almost 17,000 injuries every year. Then the bigger function of this is how often these are reported. They only believe that 15% of these are, like Riley was talking about, are reported. Only 31% of bodily exertion are reported. And then this is the one that really bothers me. 18% of violent interactions are reported. If you get hurt at work because of a violent situation, then you got to say something. You have to. But I understand why people don't.
But, I mean, how many times are there instances of, my story personally, of my violent patient, the last one I had, the psych patient in the bar ditch on the county road, man. I reported that as much as I could, but does it go further than up?
Yeah,
Right?
I
That's the
think
thing,
it varies.
is
Yeah.
that you have to have, it's got to be that complete picture. We can report it, but if the administrative people that we report to drop it, or they're like, oh man, that sucks, hope you feel better.
Or the local municipality doesn't want to do anything
Right.
with it, and that may be why only 18% of these are reported. And it could be the same thing with the overexertion and bodily too. Do you want? I've had to do workers' comp before. It wasn't a good process, and it's not something that I want to go through.
I wonder how many,
Again,
what percent of that 18% are because the EMS provider won the fight at the end of the day, and so then it had to be reported.
those are my favorite.
Right, like whenever we win that one, like they started it, but I finished it. And
then it's a problem.
How much of that 18%?
Yeah, then it's a problem.
If we get beat up, that's all right.
Yeah, but not if we finish it. Of course. So, in summary, the culture of safety is an ongoing process, and I don't think it's ever going to be done. It can't be, because we would have stopped learning about our mistakes in the past, and we're not going to be able to learn if we don't look at what we've done in the past, just like the medication and patient-related errors.
Right. Not to mention, I mean, you've got some technology.
Yep.
Technology alone, things from your LVADs and RVADs, your ventricular assist device, that how much they are advancing and how that's going to apply to us versus there's a lot of firefighters that are taking this course as well. Electric cars. What cable do you not want to cut? What do you not want to do with these Teslas, right? With these electric vehicles? What is the no there, right? That's going to change. It's not the same from whenever we went to fire academy, back when, we're neither one of us are firefighters now, but we didn't learn about that. There was no electric vehicles whenever I went to fire academy. So if that culture didn't keep up and we didn't keep up with all these changes, I could blow myself up on that electric vehicle.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to happen. Yeah, if it hadn't happened already.
Right, exactly. It's definitely one of those things for sure. So.
And this whole thing, it's going to look at a systematic core steps for research and benefit. So I know that it will probably suck to report those injuries. You may not want to report that violence. You may not want to work in a just culture environment. I sometimes think I struggle with how I communicate with people, especially being in the class or generation that I am now. But I think in the big picture, it's good for EMS, and it's only going to help us as a profession move forward and continue to get those pay raises and continue to be regarded as professionals like we should be.
Absolutely. Everybody just do your part. All we can do is what we can do, right? So you guys just get on the page that you're supposed to be as far as this just culture and reporting and doing everything in your power, and we've got to let everything else work itself out how it should. And we'll get there.
Absolutely. Guys, as always, it was great to see you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
Everybody be safe. See you later.